Now, the goal here is I've broken this up into different stages. So for example, if you took the Maya workshop, here are some things you can practice once you finish that. Or if you finish class 1, here's some stuff you can practice. Now I'm still filling this out a little bit. There's going to be a few extra things going to be added to the final list, but I did want to go over this on stream, especially since people are on break right now, before we start going into other topics as the term begins. Can anyone join? So this is going to be available to anyone. It's going to be kind of geared towards Animation Mentor students, but I'm trying to write it up so that it applies to anyone, and you can basically separate it out into stages. So for example, let's say you just finished the Maya workshop, or you just finished learning Maya. So you've just learned Maya, you've kind of got the idea behind it. Now you want to start practicing and prepping to learn animation. Well, here are some very simple tests that you can do to help solidify your knowledge on certain things. So the first thing is to redo the assignments or practice these tests if you haven't done them before. The big assignments that I highly recommend aiming for when you are just learning Maya, don't go big. Don't go into these big crazy tests with all sorts of like characters and all of this stuff. First, just focus on understanding how to move things around, how to set keys, how to... And hey, Vinny, thank you so much for the sub. Aw, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. So these are just quick tests to understand the program and understand what you're doing. And the 3 big tests that Cameron and I always recommend are the spacing ball roll. The spacing ball roll, I'm actually going to demo this one because it doesn't quite make sense just saying it, is a great test to understand spacing and how spacing can change the feeling of an animation. So essentially what it is you just go into Maya. And this is a great, if you're just learning Maya, this is a great way to learn how to set keys, how to kind of just manage the different elements of Maya. So I'm just going to create a sphere, and then I'm going to make a whole bunch of them. And oh, Walk, thank you so much for the sub as well. 3 months, geez, thank you so much. So I'm going to create a few different spheres here. Now I'm going to do this quickly by holding or hitting Shift D to duplicate the sphere, and then just hitting Shift D again, which will duplicate it and then match the same transformations. So let me actually show this here. Take your sphere, Shift D, you move it, Shift D again, it duplicates and repeats that same motion you did. Jeez. And Blue Shell, thank you so much for the sub as well. Oh man, thank you so much. So we've got all of these spheres now, and essentially what we want to do is do a quick animation. So I'm going to go on frame 1 here. The frame numbers don't matter, but you don't have to go too much. So frame 1, I'm going to take all of these, hit S to set a key. Let's go to frame, let's say 48. So it's going to be 2 seconds, or 49. Since we're starting on frame 1, I'm going to set another key, drag those forward. Now we've got all of these moving the exact same way. We hit play, whoop, there we go. Quick and easy. Now the goal of this test is to take each sphere and try to make them different, feel different, without changing the beginning or the end. They start on the same frame, they end on the same frame, but in the middle we are tweaking the spacing. And you can do this in a couple of different ways. You can do it by setting more keys. This is also a good way of understanding breakdowns at a very basic level. So let's say on this second sphere, I want this to hold a little bit longer. I want it to start off slower. I'm going to go, let's say frame 20, set a key, and I'm going to move this back right there. Now, from frame 1 to frame 20, it barely moves, and then it catches up right there. So very quick, very easy. We get that one to feel a little different. Let's do the third one. Maybe this one, I want this one to let's say, take off very quickly instead. So the other one holds. This one here, maybe by frame 25, it's already at the end. Or close to. So now we get one that speeds off. And essentially you just go through and you try to make as many different variations as you can. Make some of them go, maybe let's say this one, it's going to go fast in the middle, but then it's going to hold in the middle like that before it goes off. Like so. So you're trying to create all of these different variations. Now, doing that on its own is good. The thing that you want to do, and this goes to the whole list that we're going to talk about, is you want to be very active in what you're doing. Try to go in with an expectation. Okay, I'm going to slow this down. How can I do this? I'm going to set a key here. What are the results that I got? Think it through. Don't just move things and, okay, I'm going to set a key, move, and I didn't think about anything. I just did stuff and see what happens. You want to be very active. Think through it. This way you can see if the results that you're getting are what you expected. And this is going to help you learn faster. Now, on top of this, the other thing that this really helps with is learning the graph editor. Because once you make a whole bunch of variations, you can look at each sphere and just try to understand what is the graph editor telling you about that motion that you've created. So, for example, here's our base motion, translate X, and you can see it's this curve. Now, the basics, we've talked about this before, but the basics of the graph editor is a flat curve is slow, steep curve is fast, then slow. So this is slow, fast, slow. If we look at this one, we get slow, fast, slow. This one, we get slow, fast, pause, slow, fast, slow. We're seeing what is happening in each one of these spheres. Fast, and then a hold right there. It gets you to start understanding the graph editor very clearly. And from there, you could even just start using the graph editor to animate a sphere. So take this sphere here, and without setting a key in the viewport, I'll just start setting keys in here. So maybe I'll add in a key right there, and we'll make this go really fast. So it's like it gets shot out of a cannon. And then it's going to overshoot and settle back. And Gaming Car, hey, thank you so much for the sub. Aw, 4 months, geez, thank you so much. So now you can see with this one, is really just shooting out. And then it goes too far and comes back. So this test, it seems stupid simple. Like there's not much to it, but it is one of those tests that really help understand or help cement your understanding of the graph editor and spacing. So do that. Do bouncing ball tests. Do ball jumps. Now, what's the difference between a bouncing ball and a ball jump? Well, a bouncing ball is you just take a ball and make it feel like an actual physical ball. So maybe it's a tennis ball, a basketball. Regardless of what you do for a bouncing ball, give yourself a goal. Again, this comes with the active learning aspect of things. If you just go, okay, I'm going to animate a ball bouncing, doot, 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 bounce, done. Okay, great. But what did you learn? What did you apply, and what can you compare with to make sure that you actually did a good job? If you give yourself a specific ball bounce, I'm going to do a basketball. Okay, you animate it. Does that look like a basketball? Okay, now I'm going to animate a bowling ball. Does that feel like a bowling ball? Try all sorts of different ones, but focus on really trying to understand what makes the difference between each one. That's really going to help. Now for the ball jump, this is more of a test of figuring out what is appealing. So instead of just a bouncing ball, you make a ball, but think of it like a character. It's sitting there and then it's going to anticipate and then jump. And you just create these very basic motions and try to make it appealing and try to incorporate the bouncing ball elements into it. That's a little bit more of an advanced test, but it's a good one just to start understanding the differences, and it prepares you for class 1, which is going to be a few assignments like that. So practice with the graph editor. We talked about that before. This is where the spacing ball rule helps. The bouncing ball, you can really learn a lot with the graph editor, but really try to focus on understanding the graph editor. If you can understand the graph editor early, and this doesn't mean that you have to know every single tool in the graph editor, you have to know every single little nuance and whatnot, but it's just understanding, what do the curves mean? How can you control your timing and spacing? Just by moving keys around in there. Using the tangents and adjusting those. How do those work, and how do they work in conjunction with each other? It's just understanding essentially the curves. That is a good thing. If you can understand that early, it's going to make the rest of your learning much easier and faster, especially when it comes to cleanup. Now, this is going to be a common thread here. Practice posing your character, or any character. So if you've just learned Maya, don't go into animation just yet. Don't start just getting a character rig and throwing it in there and start animating your character. That's great, and that is fun. Like, those are good little explorations to do, but in terms of learning, a better thing to do is first just start creating poses. It's just taking a rig, making it feel like the character is appealing, that they're balanced, that their anatomy isn't broken. So a lot of times when I see people first posing out the character, the spine will start to get like these weird S shapes to them where the characters just have this wiggle through their back. And is that correct anatomically? Not really. So it's trying to make sure that your characters aren't going to be broken. Just understanding how to pose this character out in a nice, appealing way. Learning how to use reference and exaggerate it. And this is going to apply to a lot of stuff later, but this is a posing sheet that Cameron and I put together on what makes a good pose, basically a posing checklist. I've linked to this before. I'll link to it later on as well. But this basically gives you the posing checklist that both Cameron and I go through whenever we pose a character to make sure we get as much appeal as we can. So we've got that. Now, so you practice posing. Posing is huge. A lot of people underestimate the strength and power of posing. If you can learn to pose a character well, animation is going to be much, much easier. Everything comes down to posing. If you think of any animation ever, let's actually just do a quick look here. So I'm going to one of my favorite websites, Sakuga Boru, which is just a collection of really good animation. And let's think of a cartoon. There's a lot of anime in here, which those are all great, but let's think. I think they actually posted, what was it? I think it was, yeah. So we're gonna go with this. Not the most popular cartoon, but oh dang it, it's all fuzzy. This is Home on the Range. If you look at this, and it's a shame that it's all fuzzy, the posing is fantastic. No matter what frame you go on, the poses are interesting and clear, and they've got good silhouette. The facial expressions are good. It all comes down to posing. Let's actually pick another one. Hopefully something that's got a little bit more high quality here. I could also open up some clips from my computer here. I'm trying to think of see shows that I actually recognize. Let's see. Actually, so did I post a link to this here? Yeah, I did. So I would highly recommend you guys check out this webpage. It's just really good. But let's go through, and I actually have some clips here. I've shown these before, but let's just open them up. So the reason why posing is important is that everything is built on it. So if we open up this clip here and go to any frame on this shot, the pose is what's important. At no point do these feel boring and flat and the character is just there in a T pose, uninteresting. Like, look at even the toes are appealing. We go forward. The nice line of action in the arm, the balance in the character, the whole pose has a line of action. No matter where we go, poses are appealing. That's the building blocks of any good animation. So you need to practice that. There's going to be a constant throughout all of the different practices that we have in this list here is practice posing. And really focus on her head is huge. And that's one of the other things is sometimes you're going to get rigs that have really weird proportions. We still have to make sure that they are posed well. And that's where it starts getting trickier the further you go away from human proportions. So, posing out the character, and you want to focus on the appeal, consider the balance, the anatomy, and use reference. Don't just pose randomly. Use reference and try to push it. That way you can, again, compare to see whether you're pushing it correctly or just breaking it. And then if you're an animation mentor, look through the assignments for the upcoming classes. Look ahead and see what are the next students working on? What are they practicing? And watch their critiques. Take notes of the mistakes that they've made so that you don't fall into that same trap. Look at the assignments that were well done versus the ones that maybe weren't quite as well done. What's the difference? Try to see if you can spot it. And this goes for any class, regardless of class in Animation Mentor. Look ahead, especially on your break week. Look ahead and see what you can find. Look for the common issues. If you can make a list of, oh man, in class 1, everyone who's doing the bouncing ball, the majority of them have fallen into these issues. Their spacing was off, or their degradation curve was off. They forgot these things. Make a list. When you do your animation, you're going to have a list and go, okay, what am I missing? Did I hit any of these accidentally? Oops, let's fix it right away. It gets you a huge step up in your learning, and you're being active with your learning. You are making notes. That is huge. That goes for any class. If you're in class 3 right now, going into class 4 is going to be lip sync and pantomime. Start looking at the assignments or the critiques of the students who were doing their facial posing. What issues did they run into? What were the common things that they hit that you can now avoid? Learn from other people's mistakes. That's what we all do, really. We're all learning from the masters and from their mistakes. So that is huge, and that goes for every class. So that's the Maya workshop, or if you've just learned Maya, these are the big things that I recommend focusing on at first. It's not a lot, but all of these will really give you a solid base to build off of. Now, don't they sometimes dot hat to background characters in cartoons at times? Sometimes dot hat. Don't do that? Is that what you mean? In terms of posing? Sometimes characters in the background are a little blander than others, but because we're not focusing on them, we actually do want them to be a little blander. If a character is a key character, we want them to be as appealing as possible the entire time. So, we've got the Maya workshop. Now let's say you've just finished class 1 or you're learning the fundamentals. So you're just starting to learn animation, you've kind of learned the bouncing ball and all of that stuff. Now, one thing here, you'll notice this list is a little shorter. Everything that we just talked about here still apply. Just because you're in class 1 doesn't mean that you shouldn't be practicing the graph editor. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing simple tests here or looking through classmates' assignments. Those still apply. But these are going to be class specific, and as we go further, the less you have to do of the previous tests. So for example, when you get into class 6 and like you're learning how to do polish and all the fine details, you don't need to start like practice with the graph editor as much. You know the graph editor. By that point, you're a master of the graph editor. So keep in mind that these apply and build off of each other. And Conky Kong, thank you so much for the sub. Oh man, almost a year, 11 months. Jeez, thank you so much. Jeez, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So, class 1. You finished class 1, you're taking a break, or you want to keep practicing. What do? Well, the first thing is practice the assignments again, or practice the fundamentals if you haven't done the assignments yet. And is this linked anywhere? Not yet. There's still a few things that I want to add in there, some other resources, but then it'll be posted on the Animation Mentor Discord as well as the Pratt Bros Discord. So so practice the assignments again or practice the fundamentals. Essentially, do all of the assignments from class 1 and do them again. And do them until you understand them. This is not just doing them so that you have a checklist. So, okay, the first one is the bouncing ball. My tablet's crooked. I'm writing at an angle. Bouncing ball. And we don't want to just go, oh, and Kathy Comic, thank you so much for the sub. Oh man, thank you so much, everyone. I do walk cycles 5 times a week. Perfect. That's good. Get that practice in. We're going to be talking about that in just a little bit. So, bouncing ball. When we want to practice the assignments again, it is not just going through this list and going, okay, bouncing ball, did one, check. Okay, what's the next one? Pendulum, check. That's not what we want to do. What we want to do is practice it until we understand what we're doing. Practice it very quickly. You don't want to do a long test that's like 600 frames. This is going to apply throughout the whole thing. All of these tests are short as you possibly can make it. So that way you can get through a lot of them quickly and you are trying to understand. So when you're doing the bouncing ball, okay, really try to understand, why are you making the peaks the way you are? Why are they bouncing the way the balls bounce? What is the difference, like we talked about earlier, between a heavy ball and a light ball, a basketball versus a beach ball versus a balloon versus a cannonball? Really trying to understand everything of that. The pendulum, when you're animating the pendulum and creating that swing, okay, understand what it is about this breaking up of action, this overlapping action here, and how does that work? How does it work with the base of the pendulum? And again, just quick tests and iterate. When you do one, okay, what did you do wrong? What isn't working? You write those down. How can you address each one of those? Make them work. Once you do all of that, try different variations of each assignment. So bouncing balls, well, like I said, do a basketball, beach ball, all of those. But also have a ball bounce against a wall. Maybe a ball bounces down on the floor, bounces up and hits the underside of a table and then comes back down. Maybe it bounces down some stairs. Maybe you have 2 bouncing balls and they hit each other and collide. Do variations. And the pendulum can be the same thing. A pendulum that goes straight and then the thing is hanging underneath. A pendulum that does a flip. A pendulum that moves and hits another platform and stops, and then the tail has to swing through. Maybe one that does kind of this U-shaped arc or figure 8. Try different variations of each assignment. It's going to help solidify all of your understanding on these. Now, why am I harping so much on all of that? Because the fundamentals apply to everything that you are going to do. If you've been in these streams before, you've heard how much Cameron and I talk about the bouncing ball and how, oh, this motion here is the bouncing ball. This motion here is the before and after of the bouncing ball. There's so many things that apply to these fundamentals. If you understand them now and you take that time to practice them, when you get into body mechanics, it's going to be much easier. Body mechanics are essentially creating very appealing posing and then moving them in an interesting way, which applies the fundamentals. If you have those two things, your body mechanics are almost set. You only have to learn a few extra elements in body mechanics and you're solid, mostly how to break down your animation. But if you have posing and good fundamentals, a good understanding of overlap and ease in, ease out, all of that, you're already pretty much there. See, does anyone else end up feeling really overwhelmed with all the things you have to learn as a beginner? I think everyone does. I definitely remember being overwhelmed a lot when I was a beginner, like so much. I remember specifically, and I've talked about this on stream before, a moment when I was in class 1. So I was in the very first class of AM. I was struggling with, I think it was the double ball bounce assignment, the heavy and light ball. And in one of the classes, one of the Q&As, a student was in there and they were showing their 2-character dialogue shot that they were doing in class 6. So it was polished already and they're refining it. And I remember specifically looking at their shot and going, how will I ever get there? Okay, I'm struggling with a bouncing ball. There's no way I'm ever going to get there. And everything that I have to learn to get to that point is just like, my brain felt like it was going to explode. But it's all iterative. You just take one step at a time. Just keep going. Just look at the step ahead of you. It's kind of like climbing a staircase. If you look from where you are to the very tippy top of the mountain that you want to climb, it's going to seem impossible. How can you take all of those steps all at the same time? You can't. You can't take every single step all at the same time. But you can take one step at a time. And maybe you're going to need a little bit of a break part way up to take a breather, to relax, to get the strength back in your legs again. But if you take one step at a time, you're going to get to the top. And oftentimes you won't even realize you're at the top until you have no more steps left. And that's what happened to me is like, I remember specifically that point of I'm never going to be able to do this. And then when I was in class 5, many months later, I was animating my own 2-character dialogue shot. And I very specifically remember the moment where I'm sitting and I'm animating the 2-character dialogue shot. And I kind of had this, wait, I'm doing the thing I didn't think I could do. And it's just like, I flashed back to that moment in class 1 where it's like, I'll never be able to do this. And then it's like, fade effect back to me doing it. It's like, oh my, what? I'm doing it. Yes. And I didn't even realize that I got there. It's like, I look back, it's like, how did I even make it to this point? And it's just one step at a time. So it's totally okay to feel overwhelmed. It's totally okay to look at everything that you have to do to learn this and go, how am I ever going to make it? That's totally fine. But that doesn't mean that you'll never do it. As long as you take it one step at a time, you're gonna do it. You will make it. So in this case, redo all of those assignments. In class 1, the biggest thing that'll help is just understanding each one of them. And maybe you've already mastered the bouncing ball. Yep, I got it. Well, you don't have to redo that one, but do the other ones that you struggled with. Do master studies. Master studies, and this is something very important to start early and just keep doing throughout your entire career, is watching animation clips. And it could be animation, it could be film, it could be cinematography, anything. But specifically at this point, you want to focus on animation and analyze it. What makes it work? What makes it appealing? How are their poses looking so good? So for example, if we open up, let's say this shot here, let's go forward. Okay, let's analyze the poses. How are their lines of action pushing through here and looking interesting? How are they shaping the legs to create very interesting, appealing leg shapes? The arms, how are they creating that? What's the silhouette like? Think of all of those principles of posing and apply them here and try to go, okay, what are they doing and what am I not doing? What can I do to try and match these? look at the animation. So as you go through, look through the animation and try to understand, okay, what principles are they using here? Like on this head turn, they're using arcs. They're using ease in and ease out. How are they making it interesting? Where's the bouncing ball and everything? So it's doing these master studies. We've done these on stream before. We're going to do a lot more in the future, but master studies are huge. The big reason being, if you don't know what it is that, how to put this? Think about it this way. If you don't know what it is you want to be able to create in the end, how can you create it in the first place? So I want to create this really great body mechanic shot, but I don't know what goes into a good body mechanic shot. I just know that it's movement. Well, how can I replicate it if I don't know what goes into it? Let's think about it this way. It's like trying to make a cake. Got to bring in my baker background every chance I get. I want to make a cake, but all I've heard so far is the term cake. That's it. What goes into it? I don't know. How long do you cook it? I don't know. I don't know anything. I just know the word cake and that it's got icing and it tastes good. How can I possibly expect to recreate it properly if I have no idea what goes into it? That's what master studies are. We are trying to figure out what goes into it and how we can apply those same things in the same way. It's finding the ingredient list. Oh, it's 2 eggs. Oh, shoot, I was going to add 12. It's 1 cup of flour. Oh, I was just going to add a pinch of flour. No, you figure out what they are doing right, and then you try to replicate it. You don't copy it, but you figure out the ingredient list. And from there, you can make your own cake, and you can now start making variations and tweak the recipe, but you are figuring out what works. That's what master studies are. They are super important. So start doing master studies early. It's only going to help you. When are we going to get a baking stream? I'm still trying to figure out the setup. I've actually got, oh, I put it away. I've got like lavalier mics now. I've got everything. I think most of it. I've got the tripods for it. It's really just getting the laptop because I need to get a computer up there and my laptop is pretty much dead right now. Something about the hard drive just, it still runs, but the disk just keeps running at like 100% and doesn't slow down, which is not good. So it's just trying to get that element, and then we should hopefully make a baking stream. So yeah, master studies, super important. From there, pose tests. You'll notice pose tests are throughout everything. Cameron and I really push for pose tests because once again, poses are the underlying structure of any animation. Now at this point, the big things that you should be focusing on your posing is poses that really focus on appealing poses. So making sure that they look interesting and they look dynamic and that they're not all broken and weird, that they're not flat feeling. Really push that appeal, but also clear intent. So pick something that you want to showcase. In class 1, for example, you need to do a strength pose. Okay, does that pose clearly show strength? When you show it to someone and you ask, okay, what is this character doing? They shouldn't go, I don't know, or they guess the totally wrong thing. It should be really clear. The moment the person sees it is like, oh, they're lifting weights. Oh, and it's heavy weights too. They get very clear posing. Now, a few ways you can push your posing is gesture drawing. We've talked about this on stream. Essentially, you can just draw this out, pencil and paper or on the computer. You can even do this in Maya. You can do 3D or like rig gesture poses, which we've done on stream before. But you just try to capture very quickly, as quickly as you can, a pose while you're looking at reference. I don't have reference open right here, but we try to capture as quickly as we can and capture the feeling of motion, the line of action, the appeal, all of it as much as we can. Pose tests, just do a lot of different poses. Master studies of posing, same thing. Open up a cartoon, just look at a pose. How did they make it look good? And really get that understanding of posing principles like in your head. That contrapposto, twist of the body, straights versus curves, all of those things. Have that kind of cemented in your head, or make a checklist on your computer, like just write it out and post-it note on the side of your computer. Something like that can be super helpful. That way you make sure to address them as you go. Now, let's see. There's some things in the chat here. I've been animating special effects for 30 years. Nice. And it was when I started character animation that I felt very overwhelmed. Bo and Cameron are so much better at calming me. Go to all the dailies. Oh, I'm glad we can calm you. But that's awesome that you've been doing special effects like that. Oh, I love special effect animation. It's so cool. Whether it's 2D or CG, it's an amazing field, which I cannot do. I'd love to learn someday, though. And Lachonas, thank you so much for the sub. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. See, would you draw a block in 3D on top of an animated movie to figure out posing, spacing, timing? Yeah, you can definitely do that. Master studies can be all sorts of different things. So, for example, let's say I want to do a master study of this pose here for Cinderella. Well, I can either just take this and then try to recopy it with my own rig, see if I can capture the same thing. I can break it down. So, okay, break down the anatomy. You've got the rib cage right here. You've got the waist that comes down here. The leg comes through there. So you're breaking it down. The shoulder comes through right here and up here. And you can just draw over it like so, really trying to understand the forms that you're looking at and the direction. This is one of the big things that I see a lot of students actually struggle with, is understanding where the direction of a limb is going when you're looking at reference. Now, this is kind of pretty obvious here, but sometimes you'll look at reference and it's very hard to determine whether the arm is facing this way or straight ahead. So doing these types of drawovers and really trying to focus on, okay, what are the angles here? What am I looking at? What's the angle of the head right here? Really try to break it down. That can be huge. There's no wrong way to do master studies as long as you're really focused on learning something. And once again, it's active learning. We're looking at it and trying to understand what we are seeing or what we're doing here. Let's see. So yeah, hopefully that helps there. I use references from films to find out how to do things all the time. Yeah, it's great. Especially, let's say you're working in a later class and you want to do an acting shot and you really want this specific vibe to it, this specific feeling. Instead of just guessing and going, put a camera in, put a character in, done. What's the recipe? What makes that feeling happen? Okay, let's say you want to make a spooky kind of feeling, maybe very uncomfortable. Well, look at Hannibal Lecter. Like, open Silence of the Lambs and watch that. How do they make that creepy feeling when you have Clarice and Hannibal talking? Or maybe you want to do a comedic scene. Okay, look at comedic scenes and look at what they do. Like the funniest scenes that you remember just like busting a gut laughing at. What did they do in their scene that made it work? Where was the camera? Was it a flat composition? Was it a very deep composition, so like you could really see the depth here? What did they do to make it funny? Deadpool, yeah. I still remember the scene in Deadpool. This isn't really a spoiler, but when he broke his hands against, was it Colossus? I remember Cameron, we didn't expect that to happen, and it was just, we had tears in our eyes. It was the way they shot it, the timing of it was so good. But look at those, figure out what they are doing, and then use that in your shot. Don't just go in blind. Going in blind is okay, but how can you expect to make it work if you don't know what it takes to make it work in the first place? So yeah, use references. Yeah, the Disney Pixar spacing, just go through here, find a scene you find really interesting and just track that spacing. What do they do? We actually, right here in this head turn, if you watch the spacing of her head turn, I think it was just before this. Where was it? I love those little hand motions right here. See how her head turns and she goes screen left, right, right. She doesn't just go left, right, and just boring. It's one direction, doot, doot, and they kind of step it. And it makes this nice little appeal. So we get this big turn here, then bigger turn, pause, small turn, and then a tiny turn right there before another big turn. It's not just left, right, right. That would be boring. So we can see, oh, that's a cool way of doing a head turn. Let's see if we can add that, or maybe tweak it a little bit so it's not a direct copy, but use elements of that. I love how you've got the Disney Castle logo right there. So good. But yeah, it's so good. And yeah, I think I forgot another sip emote. Thanks for the reminders. Now, what am I using? The software I'm using right here, this is Keyframe Pro. I have a link to it here. There you go. It's a great piece of software. I highly recommend it. See, you worked on Batman? Nice. That's awesome. I'll definitely have to check that out. And I might take you up on that offer at some point. Once I get some free time. I would love to learn more effects animations. So, going through here, pose tests. Really understand your posing, especially at this level here at class 1, or when you're first learning the fundamentals. You want to be able to do good posing. Everything that happens here in class 2 is gonna come down to posing. If you don't have a good pose, no matter what beautiful animation you put on top of it, it's not gonna look good. It's gonna be boring and it's gonna be bleh. Really start posing things out. Now, how to study without copying the reference? Well, I actually did a few different talks on that before. Not copying the reference really comes down to the exploration pass. I think if you go to videos, there's a whole stream just on that, on how to do the exploration pass and not just trace over or rotoscope your reference. Essentially, it's trying to push your posing and planning that out first before you even jump into your animation, so you figure out the best way to enhance your animation. So I would recommend checking that out. And if you can't find the link, just message me on the Discord group and I can try to find it for you. So, moving on the checklist here. Oh, there you go, Johan. Voila! Perfect. So let's say you just finished class 2. Now you're ready to take a break and either take a break or prepare for class 3. What are the things that you can focus on to prep yourself? Well, the first one is walk cycles. Really understand how to make a good walk cycle. This is very important. Regardless of the program that you're taking, if you're taking a program, usually you're not going to do that many walk cycles. So for example, at this point in Animation Mentor, in class 1, you've done 2 walk cycles, your vanilla walk and then a character walk, personality walk. In class 2, you'll have maybe done another 2 walk cycles, maybe a walk cycle and then a personality walk or a run of some kind. So at this point you've done maybe 4. That's not that many. And walk cycles are very important to understand and learn. Why? Because characters walk from one place to the next all the time in films. Characters are often walking. Now, there are times when they are not. So this whole scene here, we're probably not going to see much walking at all in this whole thing. But think of Tangled. How many scenes in Tangled do you have Eugene and Rapunzel walking through the woods? Or just walking around in the tower? This is very important. Understanding how to do a good walk is going to be a huge bonus for you, especially if you're thinking of going into gaming. That's going to be like your bread and butter. But also learning how to create different walks. How can you make walks feel appealing when they're very fast? So sometimes you'll have like a 6-frame step. That's very, very fast. How can you make that appealing? How can you make a really slow walk appealing? What is the difference? What goes into one versus the other? What's the difference between a walk, a jog, and a run? All of these things will just give you a good foundation. And the thing with walks is, as humans, we have evolved to understand walks visually. We know when something's not right with a walk. It's what allows us to see whether an animal is sick or if a person is sick. If they've got a little bit of a limp, we can tell. We can usually see that something's not right. And if anyone here is living with other people, most of you probably have had moments where you can hear someone walking and you know exactly who that is just by hearing the way they walk. Just the cadence in the steps and the weight of the steps, you can tell who it is, because we've evolved to really know that fine-tuned difference. Now, what that means for us as animators is that it's very easy to tell when a walk doesn't feel right. You can look at it and go, no, that's weird. There's a pop there. Now, that makes them one of the hardest things to animate as well. But they're very good to practice because it gives you that fine tune. You can really start polishing things up and learning how to polish well with a walk cycle. So, focus on walks. Just do very quick ones, like 2 steps. That's it. Don't make a huge, epic thing out of it. And don't worry about getting it perfect, getting every single knee pop out. The core of a lot of these tests here is not perfection. It is understanding and then repeating. Make sure you understand, what did I do wrong? What should I avoid in the next version of this? And then do it again. Find what works, what doesn't. And again, you're always being active in your learning here. So, try different walks. The other thing that the walk cycle allows us to do is try different workflows. See which one makes sense to you and what appeals most to you. So, you could do a forward walk. That's when a character is walking and the character is actually walking forward in the scene. You could do a treadmill walk, which is basically the character walking as if they're on a treadmill and they're not moving forward, it's just their feet cycling under them. You could do a layered walk, where you animate the hips first, then add the legs after. Try these. Explore different workflows, see which one makes sense to you, and which one feels more comfortable. The sooner you can find workflows that make sense to you, the sooner animation will become a little easier. Now, this is not to say that you will find the one workflow that will always work and you will stick to forever and ever and ever. No, they do not exist. There is no golden workflow. Workflows will change all the time. But if you can start to understand the differences between the workflows early, it makes animating later on much easier because you're used to switching or figuring out what works best. So, walk cycles are great. Now, on top of that, walk cycles are nice, but we want to do more body mechanics. That's the whole point. So what else can we practice? Well, the big thing that I recommend is don't do big things. Don't go, okay, I'm going to practice body mechanics. What am I going to do? let's do a 600 frame parkour shot, and the character is going to be running, and then they do a flip through the air and then bounce off a wall and then off a trampoline, and then they slide through under a grate. No. Those are great and they are fun to do, but the whole goal of this is to, once again, understand where you struggle with, fix it, and then move on. And when you work on a big long shot, if you make a mistake halfway through or very early on, you are now trying to fix that mistake for the rest of the whole shot. Instead of doing a short shot that, oh, I made a mistake. Okay, let's finish this up. Let's start a new one and avoid that mistake altogether and move on. So simple, short shots. And what I typically recommend is stick with simple mechanics, like a side step. Just have a character step to the side. Now, it doesn't have to be boring where the character just goes and slides over like that, where it's just boring. Like, you'd have a character just kind of standing there and, oh, and they kind of hop in excitement, or maybe they're like shuffling and like scared of something. Like, you can add some theatrical elements to it, but it's a simple motion. Sitting down, standing up, doing a push-up, doing a jump. Maybe you have them jump across a building, but that's it. They don't have to do a big, complex series of actions, just one action. And that's going to be huge because those little actions go through everything. So, for example, we've got this clip open here. I love how her hair is just blowing in the wind here. Like, this scene here, if you look at the characters, look at what Pocahontas does right here. Sidestep. She shifts her weight, steps to the side, and then shifts her weight back. That's it. What is Vanellope doing here? Takes a step and jumps up. That's it. And then adds a little bow to the end, but it's really the jump. So a lot of these motions is just a simple motion put back to back to back with a bunch of other simple motions. If you can understand how to do one, you can put them all together. So don't worry about trying these big complex shots. Focus on understanding the simple ones and making them really feel good. And once again, it's the understanding element, not just the, okay, I'm going to do a sidestep. Throw in some keys and let's hope for the best. You want to understand why the character is doing what they're doing. Why are their hips rotating the way they are? What's the relationship between the body and the legs and the arms and the chest and the head? All of that. That's going to be what pushes you to that next level. So, simple body mechanics, and then keep it short. That's the big thing. A lot of these can just be 48 frames max. That's it. You just want to do as many as you can. That repetition is going to be way more important than the length of the shot. Now here, this is going to be a big one. Breakdown practice. So it sounds like we're just practicing to like have a mental breakdown. No, we don't want that. Not that mental breakdown. Animation breakdown. Learn how to really think through your poses. So you have two poses. How are you going to in between them and put the poses in between? Understand why you are doing that. If you can start doing this breakdown practice, which is just learning how to create interesting and appealing breakdowns, studying reference, doing master studies, how do they create breakdowns, really understanding that lead and follow element. If you can learn that now in class 3, essentially you've got all of your body mechanics down for the rest of it. You're going to be in a really solid spot. So practice those breakdowns. This can be very simple. One pose, another pose, create a breakdown in the middle. That's it. And then you do that many times. So it's just trying to get that understanding in there. Now, this one is not as important, but if you've already got everything else down, this is a good thing to start learning. Just do quick constraint tests. Constraints are not necessary as an animator. I know many students who have gone through all of Animation Mentor without really ever learning how to do a constraint properly or like in depth. Is that bad? No, not really. It's just part of it. It's a technique, it's a tool. You don't need constraints. You can animate without. If you think of 2D animation, there's no constraints. You just put it in the character's hand, whatever they're holding. So this is not a necessity, but if you can learn and you have the time to do some quick constraint tests and understand constraints, it can make everything else much easier down the road. So I always recommend doing a few passes when you have some time, and nothing complex. Pick up a cup, put it down, hold a sword, lift or push a heavy box. You can kind of tie that into doing simple body mechanics. So maybe just lifting a box or pushing a box. That's it. That could be very nice. And then once again, pose tests, but this time try to do pose tests that clearly capture motion or an action. So not so much just like a heavy, or like we talked about strength before, and it's like holding something heavy. And okay, we can see that the object is heavy and the character's holding it, but try to capture the feeling of the character lifting the object in that one frame of them moving. In one pose, we should be able to see that the character is moving, not just stationary and posed out as if they're running. It's like the difference between an actual run and me going like this. It's like, oh yeah, I'm running. Because if you can't get that pose to feel like it's in motion, what you'll end up getting is, you remember those like old like 80s movies and stuff, and they're like, maybe there's a superhero or something and they're trying to run really fast and it's just on a green screen and they're doing like this, and it's just like, yeah, running along, or like usually it's front view and they're doing this. It's like, yeah, they're really running. And it's like, no, it's not. It's just them on not even on a treadmill. It's literally just them moving their arms. And like, oh, the Batman, Adam West Batman, if anyone's seen that, when they're running and they're just doing this, it doesn't feel like they're running. We don't want that in our animation. Well, unless you're doing a comedy shot. We want them to actually feel like they're running. So create pose tests that try to capture the feeling of motion in one pose, in just that one pose. And this could be any action. The feeling that they are doing something, not just like sitting still. So that's class 2. Let's see, I'm catching up with the chat here. Okay. You just described my main pitfall of trying to work out all of my animation muscles at once with a big shot, and then getting burnt out when splining what turned out to be much more complex than expected. Exactly. I've experienced that. I've seen that happen so many times, where as animators, we want to make cool shots. I've done it before. Like, I've planned shots on stream and it's like, okay, I'm gonna keep it simple. I'm just gonna do this quick demo for the stream, and then I'll start like storyboarding it out and planning it out. And by the end, it's like 1,200 frames and it's this whole sequence. And it's like, where did I go wrong? What happened here? And I've had it in my demos where it's like, okay, we're going to animate something short. And it ends up randomly, somehow I got to 300 frames. It's like, no, too much. 50 frames. That's it. Keep them simple. It is so much more beneficial to do a quick, simple 48 frame test than a 500 frame epic. You're going to learn so much more. And then when you're ready to make that really cool shot that you've got this really cool idea for, you're not going to throw it away as a test. This is the big thing to me, is how many times, and I'm sure many of you here who are animators have had this experience. I've had it many times. You have this really cool idea. It's like, oh, this is going to be a great shot. If I can get this, it's going to be a demo reel piece for sure. It's going to be like, there's going to be these cool motions and it's going to be epic. And then you start animating it, and it turns into just this pile of mush that is just like nowhere near what you saw in your head. it is so disheartening. It just kills your motivation because you put all of this work in, you thought it was going to be amazing, and it turns out to be meh. Why? Because we use it as a test. We used it to practice instead of practicing first and then doing it. It would be, again, we're going to go with a baking example. Let's say I need to make a cake for a wedding. It's going to be this amazing 3-tier cake, and it's going to have all sorts of icing sculptures and like flowers, icing flowers, and all of this stuff. What am I going to do? I've never baked a cake before. Am I going to go, okay, let's dive right in and make the cake, hope it turns out, learn how to do the icing on the final cake? I don't even know how to pipe icing yet, and I'm trying to make these complex icing flowers? No. What you're going to do is you're going to first make simple, quick cakes, just little cakes, to make sure that the underlying cake tastes good and you know how to cook it. Make sure that the recipe is good. Okay, now you can build the actual base. When you're going to do the icing, you don't just throw all the icing onto the cake and then go for it. You practice first. Okay, first just practice piping the icing. Then you make patterns on just this little test. Like oftentimes when I started learning how to do icing, it was just like on a piece of cardboard, and you're just practicing piping it on cardboard. Okay, learn how to do a flower. Once you know how to do that, then you can put it on the final cake. It's quick, short tests that allow you to master the skill first, and then you put it all together. That is going to give you that awesome shot that you want versus throwing it all in and hoping it turns out. See, I worked on Batman 2, Alien 3. Nice. That's awesome. Fire effects and explosions. Nice. That's cool. See, I ended up making a bunch of constraints and really struggled with the blend, parent, and IK/FK toggles, but I ended up learning a lot from it, even if it wasn't a great shot. Yeah, so quick tests. A lot of these tests, the big thing with these tests is they will go wrong. They will just explode. There will be times when you open it up and it's like you start animating and nope, I went the wrong direction here. And you can just imagine the whole shot's on fire, and it's like, just close it off and move on. And that's fine. That's the purpose. It allows us to make these mistakes and learn from them, and then do it better, until finally we understand what goes on and we can put it into our final masterpiece. And it doesn't mean that things won't go wrong later in the masterpiece either, but we'll have that base on how to fix it. And that's the important bit. We're getting married this year, you're baking. Well, if you want me to ship you a cake, it might get a little squished and mushed by the time it gets to you. And depending on where you are, the border might not like shipping a cake through. You might have like fingerprints as they like went through it. But yeah, I can give you a recipe at least. See, have I seen the Trail for Clay Dream, a doc about Will Vinton? I don't believe I have. If you have a link to that, definitely feel free to share. I'd love to see it. So, going back to the talk here. So, class 2, these are the things I would recommend focusing on. These are what are going to allow you to master the things that you learned in class 2, as well as start to prep for class 3. Now, let's say you've finished class 3 and you're taking a break and or you're prepping for class 4. What are things you can practice? We'll start going a little faster through here because a lot of this is going to be similar. So, breakdown tests. Once again, really focus on understanding breakdowns. At this point, at class 3, you should have your posing down. It's not that your posing in is going to be like masterpiece perfect, but you should have solid posing. Your posing should not be okay. You should be in class 3 and you should have good posing. So what you want to really focus on now is really getting good breakdowns, because animation is posing, the fundamentals, and breakdowns. If you can get those three things in there, body mechanics are sold, pretty much. There's a few other elements that go in there, but that's pretty much it. If you can make a good pose that looks appealing, great. If you can put a breakdown in between them that is good and appealing and interesting, you've got the basis of motion. And from there, you just add in the ease in, ease out, overshoots, overlap. On top of all of that, you've got motion, and appealing, good motion. So focus on doing breakdowns. And a good test that I've seen online is, and I've done this a few times myself, is you create 3 poses. You can either come up with a story for each pose, or just like randomly create 3 different poses that have no connection to each other, and then break down the motion in between them, but think of 3 different ways of creating that breakdown. So you have basically pose A, pose B, pose C, and now you have to create 3 different versions of how you get from pose A to B and B to C. So let's say you have a head turn, it would be doing this. So you have pose A, pose B. Well, how do you get between them? You could go down, then up. You could go up, then down. You could lead with the jaw. You could lead with the top of the head. There's different ways you can do that. If I have an arm pose up here and then down here, let's say I'm going to point like that. Well, I could break it down by going up first and then down. So that's pose A, pose B. Break down, down. Or I could go straight. I could lead with my finger like that. They're all different ways of going from 1 to 2 right there. So this is a great practice. I love doing these. And I said 3 poses here. It could be 2 poses. It could be 4 poses. 3 is like a good number because it forces you to not just do A to B, but A, B, and then maybe C, and then how to connect them together. At this point, that's a great practice to do. Learn about more complex constraints. So if you've already started learning about constraints in class 2, this is the time to start doing a few more tests just on more complex things. So take a character, have them pick up a hat, put it on their head, and now it follows their head. Switching props from one hand to the other. So I have my pen here, doing that. Doing a pen spin. Something like this. So being able to have a character manipulate an object in an interesting way. That is great. If you can start understanding how you can do that easily, it makes complex animations, or animations that seem complex, not so bad. And honestly, like a pen spin like this, it looks tricky, but I actually did a demo on stream a while back, and it's not that hard. It's a lot of understanding how to set up the constraints for the pen in the first place. Once you have that, the animation isn't that bad, but this would look pretty cool on a reel if you could have a character doing this while they're talking and they're acting, and then it's like, well, I don't know. And then they start thinking and they're doing this kind of more complex animation. That's just really cool. So, more in-depth polished posing. So this is your finished class 3. You're going to be starting into class 4, which is going to be facial characters. Now, at this point, it's good to start practicing some facial posing, just to start understanding what all the controls are going to be, so you're not blindsided when you get into the next class. There will be some explanation on there, but it's good to get a head start. So find a rig online. There's lots of free rigs with some facial posing, and just create some quick facial poses. And once again, do master studies, do comparisons, all of that good stuff. Also focus on hand posing. At this point, you want to be able to really pose out hands in interesting ways. That's going to be huge, especially when you get into pantomime. Face and hands are going to be a big part of it. It's going to be the body first, but especially hands are going to be important. And there you go, Blaze. There's the pen spin demo. Awesome. You guys are all awesome. Everyone just has all of these links on hand. It's so cool. So hand poses and then full body and face poses. So do the whole body and then the face. And the key here is to make sure that if you take away the face, the body is still readable. So for example, if I pose myself like this and I smile, well, yay, it's a happy pose. But if I stop smiling, did the body change? Can we tell that the character is happy just through the body? No. It just looks like the body's the same. If you cut this off and then just focus on the body, nothing is selling it. So really try to push that full body face and pose that really tells a story, that tells the emotional beat of the character. If you can start practicing that now, when you get into class 4, you're going to be set. The other thing in class 3, or once you finish class 3, start finding dialogue clips. If you're on a break, this is perfect. Take that time to find dialogue clips. Look ahead, look at the dialogue clips that they are required in class 4, and look for clips that are similar in length and kind of dynamic attitude. We've talked about dialogue clips a lot on the streams and what to look for in dialogue, but find a collection of dialogue early. That way, when you get into class 4, you're not having to spend time just Googling for dialogue and just finding dialogue. You can just jump right into planning, which is going to be huge. And then pose tests. This kind of goes into this a little bit, same kind of thing. Do pose tests that capture character and personality. So the whole pose should tell you who this character is. One thing I like to do is have 2 copies of the rig in the scene and have both characters happy. So let's say we do a happy pose for both characters, but make it feel like each character is unique. Actually, I have a test here that we did on stream once that demonstrates that. Let's see here. We had it right here. So I don't have I have the render here. So this was the pose test that we started with, is both characters neutral, and you can see both characters are just there. There's no personality to them. They're just both in T poses. That doesn't tell us anything about their character. So what we ended up doing was we posed them out. And this was the neutral pose, their default stance when they're just kind of bored. And now we can see that each character has a distinct personality. That's the goal here. In this case, there's 2 different rigs. Take 2 of the same rig and put them both as happy or sad or angry, but there's different ways of being angry, or there's different ways of being happy. Maybe one character is happy and they're laid back and it's just like like that happy smile. The other character is super excited and like very just like everything's just like up to 100% all the time. Maybe the other person is just like they're more closed off. They don't really want to show that they're happy, but you see that smirk in the corner as they're trying to be serious, but like oh sure, it's getting through to them. Try to do that where you really push the personality of this person. We can tell in this pose what their underlying character is. That's great. And you don't need to have a face for it. Try to do it in just the body. So that is huge. Now, let's see. A serious question. When you feel overwhelmed or beaten down by not getting it, what are some good ways to get past that? So you don't just quit and say, I can't. That's a very good question. Something I've gone through many times. When I was a student, I had many times where I felt like I was never going to get it, where I should just quit. I came so close to quitting. I remember at least 3 different times during my time at AM where it's just like, I was ready to just call it and go, no, I'm done. I can't do this. I'm never going to get it. I quit. The biggest thing that's helped me over the years is, first of all, take a break. Just take a step back and kind of get it out of your head. Because especially at some point, if you are in a program and you're just going and going and going, there's so much that you're cramming in your head all at once, and it can just become overwhelming. So take a break as much as you can. If you can, take a break between terms. That's not a bad thing. And this goes for any program. If you're an animation mentor, iAnimate, Anim School, whichever. If you're allowed to take a break, take it. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that the people who are not taking a break are better than you. It just means that you're taking the time for yourself to let everything absorb and really understand what it is that you're needing to do. I wish I had taken a break when I went to AM. I didn't. I went straight through, and boy, did I burn out 3 times. 4 times. 4 major burnouts because of it. And that's just because of what was going on in my life as well at the same time. So take breaks. Now, once you've kind of taken a little, it doesn't even have to be a long break, like just take a day off if you can. The next thing that really helped me, and I'm going to start with this because it's kind of the most important one to me, and let's go full screen for this, is treat yourself like a friend. And we've talked about this on stream a lot, but the big thing is look at your work, and what would you tell your friend if they came to you and went, I'm not getting it, I'm not understanding, my work sucks? What would you tell them? Would you go, yep, you're right, it sucks, you're never going to get it? At that point, I don't think they're going to be your friend for much longer. No. You would go and you'd look at their work and you would think, okay, how can it be improved? What is my friend struggling with? Okay, they're struggling with their posing. Okay, they're struggling with these elements, their spacing. You try to figure out what it is that they need to work on. That's what we need to do. When we look at our own work, we have to treat ourselves as a friend and go, okay, I'm not getting it. What do I need to do to get it? And yes, it might not look great, but it doesn't mean that the person itself is terrible and sucks and is never going to make it. Treat yourself like a friend. And for me, like, I've got a twin brother. I've got Cameron. We both went through AM at the same time. I went through that experience where when Cameron would say, oh, my work sucks, I can't get it, I would look at his work and it's like, no, but it's actually pretty good. You are understanding it. Here's the things that aren't working. And then vice versa. I had many times when I would look at my own work and it's like, it sucks, I can't get it, it's the worst thing ever, I'm a failure as an animator. I was really negative on my own work. I still have that. I struggle with that a lot. But Cameron would come in and he would look at my work and go, no, like, there's things that don't work, yeah, but if you fix this, this, and this, you're gonna get it. And this is, again, the importance of short tests is, if it's a long shot that you're always trying to do, trying to fix that could mean having to rework the entire thing, and it's going to take forever, and it's very hard to do. Or you're working on a short test and you go, okay, I really failed this. What did I not do? Okay, I'm struggling with this, this, and this. Throw that out. Now do some short tests that focus on those things that you were struggling with. Then try again. And you get better and better and better, faster and faster and faster. So that's the big thing. Treat yourself like a friend, and then analyze what it is that you're struggling with. Or if you're kind of blind to it, this is where having a network of people is important. Ask someone, what am I struggling with? What are the top 3 things that I should be focusing on to make my animation better? And then focus on those. really push your understanding of those elements. If someone tells you, like, for example, oh, you need to work on your posing, it needs to be a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more interesting, do master studies, do pose tests. Again, quick tests. Really get that core understanding of posing in there. Then you can come back. So it's a lot of those types of elements. But the biggest one, at least to me, is treating yourself like a friend and not beating yourself down, because that's just cruel. It is cruel. And the more you do it, the more you start believing it. And I fell into that a lot. So, yeah, it's the big thing though is also take a break. Just take a step back and think. Just it's more to clear your head, to step out of that negative environment that you've built around yourself and around that shot. Go outside if you can, take a walk, do a little bit of a workout, maybe read a book, watch some TV, just whatever it is that makes you relaxed and happy. Or even take a longer break if you need. So, yeah, hopefully that helps. And if you have any other questions on that, definitely let me know. I've also done a bunch of talks on like mental health on these streams. So if anyone's interested in that and like different techniques you can use to hopefully improve, at least I'm not an expert on this. This is just stuff that's helped me over the years. I would recommend checking those out. So let's see, looking through the questions here. See, what do they ask for regarding dialogues? So in terms of dialogues for classes, if you're in Animation Mentor, what I would recommend is just look at the class ahead of you and look at what they look for. The length of it, the average length of each shot, and what their kind of the typical type of shots are. That's going to be the best bet, because sometimes it can change. And I forget the exact frame range. I think it's like 300 frames maximum for class 4, something like that. I could be totally wrong on that. So yeah, just look ahead. And for anyone who's not in the class, if you're looking for dialogue, keep it short. Once again, the biggest thing that you're going to help yourself with when you're doing any animation is keeping things short. If you're going to take a shot and it's a 10-second dialogue clip, that's going to be 10 seconds. Is what? 1 second. So 240 frames, 10 seconds. Yeah. Don't go more than that. Like, you don't need more than that. 10 seconds is pretty long. Try to aim for like a 5-second clip. So that's just going to be 120 frames, something like that. Keep it short. I see people who try to do like a 600 frame, 800 frame dialogue shot for their first dialogue shot. No. Again, think of the cake. We don't want to make a wedding cake right away. We want to make these short little cakes that if it doesn't turn out, who cares? And then we can build up and create something better out of it, out of the mistakes. So something short. And if you're doing just quick tests, like, it can just be literally a line of dialogue. And we're actually going to talk about that next here. So that's a good segue into the next little bit here. Is, let's say you've just finished class 4. You finished the pantomime, the acting shot, and the acting level, or you're at this stage in your animation where you are doing acting shots. What are some quick tests that you can do to improve yourself? Well, first of all, lip sync tests. Take a line of dialogue, and can literally be like a line, not a paragraph, not a back and forth, just a character saying hello, just a character saying how are you, something like that, like 2 or 3 words, and you animate that. And when you're animating it, you can just animate this. You don't need to do the whole face, you don't need to do the whole body. This is a lip sync test. It's just animating the mouth. So do a whole bunch of variations just animating the mouth. Short, quick tests that you can learn how to move and animate the mouth. And instead of doing a lot of different big, huge tests of different characters and like these big animations, do a quick test, the character from the front, do one from the side, do from the 3/4, and you can use the same dialogue clip and just see how you would animate those from different angles. That's going to be huge to understand how to move the mouth in an appealing way. Do eye tests. Now you're animating just this section of the face here. Brows, eyes, and upper cheeks right there. And just animate blinks. Learn how to animate a good blink. If you can animate a good blink and you find out the formula for blinks, because they do kind of have a formula to them. Once you understand that, any shot going forward, you know how to animate a blink. You know exactly where to put your keys. Boom, blink, done. Do eye darts. How do you move an eye in an appealing way? Eye roll. So a character rolling their eye or like pivoting in a smoother way. How do you make that feel natural? Do just these eye tests or expression tests even, where the character, just in the eyes, you can feel if they're happy or sad or angry, whatever. Quick tests. Again, it can literally be 12 frames. It could be 24 frames, nothing long. Do quick pantomime tests. So this is kind of similar to the breakdown tests here. You have a character, you create 2 emotional beats. So pose A, pose B, and they have, maybe they start off sad or start off happy and then they end sad. Okay? Animate them going through that from one emotion to the next. Doesn't have to be long, but create that believable change, not just sliding into the emotion, not just neutral, happy. No, have them think what made them sad. What they started off happy, and did they just go sad, or was there a breakdown of it where it's like they're happy and then oh, and you just have this motion coming down, and that motion there, like how long was that whole thing was maybe 4 seconds, 5 seconds, so 100 frames. And it's not complex. You don't have to do a big body thing, but just a quick emotion change. Now it could be a much bigger and like really happy, and then it comes down, everything sinks down. But the core is understanding how you can change a character from one emotion to the next and have them think through it, not just slide through it. Facial expression change test. Similar thing, but now you're just focusing on the face. This is kind of putting all of these together, but just for the face. So lip sync, eyes, and the pantomime, the one expression to the next. So they start off happy and then, it's sad. And how do you move the lips? They don't have to talk, but what's the mouth going to do? What are the eyes going to do? How do you connect them together? Now, in your pose tests, if you're going to be doing just quick poses, the big thing I recommend is poses that capture a story, like a moment in a story where you look at it and it's not just a character running. It's a character running from something. It's a character running to something. There's a story element in here. There's this grander feeling in the character and what they are doing. This is a great start to learning composition, and as well, just kind of pushing more of the pantomime feeling into each pose. Also, start doing multi-character poses, where you have multiple characters in the scene, not just one. That's going to be huge, because when you get into class 5, that's what you're going to be doing, 2 characters in a shot. So learning how to create a good, appealing composition with 2 characters is huge. And then, of course, find dialogue for your next class. So, yeah, lip sync tests, I highly recommend, especially just get that practice in there. Lip sync is honestly not super hard once you learn it. It is amazingly difficult and annoying when you first start off, and it doesn't make sense, and it's hard, and it just, it's frustrating. Once you understand lip sync, it's really not that hard. It's pretty quick to animate, as long as you keep certain things in mind. So doing those tests will get you there faster than if you're just working on these big shots. Let's see. Was the document shared? Not yet. I'm going to be sharing this document hopefully later today, maybe over the weekend. It depends on how soon I can get all the links in here, because I want to add some links to other things in the document so people have examples that they can build off of. Let's see. Catching up with the chat here. Yeah, breaks are important. I wish I had taken a break between class 3 and 4. Yeah, usually I would recommend taking a break between class 3 and 4, specifically because 4, 5, 6, those are the acting classes, and it's good to make sure you have a good understanding of your body mechanics first, and it also kind of gives you a time to find dialogue for the next class instead of diving right in and having to find dialogue right at the start. Now, how long is too long a break? That's actually a good question. There is no length that is too long, I would say. I know some people who took breaks and 5 years later, they came back to animation. And things happened, life happened, family happened. They just couldn't get back into it, so they had to take a break. Sometimes it's just that time that you need to recover mentally or physically. The main thing is, let me put it this way, there is no too long for a break. The longer it is, the harder it will be to jump right back to where you were. There's going to be a little bit more of a learning curve again to kind of get back to what you knew. But if you want to take a break and you want it to be an active break where you're not just dropping it and kind of pulling away completely, well, you can keep doing these types of tests. Just do these little exercises. And if you keep doing that on your own, then yeah, there's no break that's too long. You're going to keep practicing. You're going to keep learning. Now, you can keep learning on your own with animation. Animation is not something that has to be taught in a school. You can learn it on your own or just from resources online. It's going to take a little longer and going to be harder in some areas, but it's totally possible. So, yeah. Don't feel like there's a time limit where it's like, well, it's been a year, I'm too far gone now, I'll never get back. No, not at all. See, but with dialogue, from my experience, is to do 10 to 12 seconds or less. Would you go beyond that? That is very difficult to finish the shot because of length. Yeah, don't 10 to 12 seconds, no more. That's really long already, typically. Let's see. Catching up. Let's see, I know I shouldn't be thinking about this, but what happens if you don't pass a class at AM? So if you don't pass a class at AM, you'll have to retake that class. So if I, for example, if I went through Animation Mentor and I failed class 3, I have to retake that class in order to be able to advance. I need to be able to pass that. The reason for that is everything builds off of itself. If they were to allow you, or let's say, or allow me to move on to class 4, so I failed class 3, if they allowed me to go on to class 4 regardless, I'm just going to fail that class and I'm not going to understand what I need to advance. I'm just going to be struggling with the same things I struggled with in class 3, but now they're teaching the next thing and I'm lost. So it's very important that you build your skills up, that you understand what it is, the core principle that you are being taught in that class before you move on to the next one. So if you fail a class, you have to retake it. Now, this has happened rarely, but sometimes you can take a break, learn it on your own. So let's say redo the assignments for class 3, and then kind of present your reel again to AM and go, hey, here's my new work that I've done. Can I advance to class 4 with this? this new understanding, and sometimes they'll allow you if it's really good. But the problem is, just looking at a final shot, it's hard to say whether you actually understand those fundamentals or not. So it's rare, but it is possible. Now, I will say, and we talked about this in a previous stream in depth, like failing a class is not failing as an animator or failing as a student. Just because you fail a class, it does not mean that you're not as good as someone else or that you're never gonna get there. Not at all. It just means that you didn't quite understand the fundamentals or the things that they were being taught right now, and you just need a little bit more practice. That's it. The mentor always wants the best for you. That's one of the greatest things about animation mentors. All the mentors are really, really awesome. And I'm sure all the online schools are like this. iAnimate, Anim School, I'm sure they're like that. I know a few of the mentors from the other schools, and they are amazing people. No one wants you to fail. No one is failing you and going, haha, you have to retake the class, you're never going to make it. No. What they are doing is, okay, if we let you pass, you're just going to be struggling and you're not going to be able to advance in a clear and proper way. You should retake this so that you really understand these elements first before you move on. It's just that. It's just making sure that you have that understanding. So, yeah, it is a gut punch. It hurts to fail. Like I'm not. It's easy to say, oh, it's not bad. It doesn't mean that you're never gonna make it. And that's easy to say. When you actually get that failing grade, oh, it hurts. Whew, it really, really hurts for a lot of different reasons. But through that hurt, and it's hard to see at the time, it is not the final part of your journey. It is just part of the learning process. I know many, many students who have failed classes, who have gotten to a certain point in Animation Mentor and then gone back to class 1. So they made it to class 3 or maybe even 4. And then they went back to class 1 and retook the classes. And now they are amazing animators. Just fantastic, like jaw-dropping animations. Failing the classes or having to retake classes does not mean that you're a bad animator. Just everyone's learning at a different speed. Some people, when they're an animation mentor, they've already got like 5 years experience in the industry. Other people have 0 experience in animation, but they might have experience in other things. When I started Animation Mentor, I had 0 experience in animation, but I had like 7 years experience in Maya. I knew how to use Maya, so I never had to struggle with Maya. Some people don't have that, so 0 experience in animation and 0 experience in Maya. So you're trying to learn Maya, you're trying to learn animation, you're trying to do everything here. It might take a little bit longer. Some people have life that they have to deal with. Like, some people, it's okay, you're going through Animation Mentor and you don't have to pay rent because you're living with your parents still, or maybe with someone else. You don't have a job, so you can dedicate AM full time. Great. Well, in one term, the amount that you can learn with that is right here. But what if you have to work 2 jobs, and you have a family, and you have kids that you have to take care of? The amount of work that you can get done each week is only about there in comparison. It's going to take longer. It might be harder. It doesn't mean that you're not going to make it. It's just different. And one is not, it's not comparable. So yeah, it definitely hurts though. Oh, it hurts so much. I was lucky I never failed a class, but I've known people who have, and I've had a few grades that were not great, mostly because of like life happened and I couldn't work on my assignment that week. And oh, it hurts. It really hurts. see. So what I'm doing now, graduated back in 2014, and didn't touch your reel until a year ago. Putting together a placement reel for July, and I'm stoked to see where they recommend I jump back in. Nice. That's awesome. Speaking of jumping back in, are there any mentors you suggest once registration opens? Hoping to get into intro to acting. Honestly, I would go with any of the mentors, whichever one works best for your time slot. I have a soft spot for Bula Rebello. He was Cameron's mentor. He's amazing. I love him. He's just the nicest guy. Really tough grader. Like he will tell you what's wrong on your shot, but really nice guy. And then what's it? Ray Chase? Is it? Is he in class 4? I forget who's teaching class 4 next term. But yeah, you're not going to go wrong with any of them. I also love Dana Bodway, but I don't think she's teaching class 4. She was my mentor for class 4. Derek Esparza, he's really good too. I've had a few chats with Derek, and he's a really funny guy. Tough is what I need. Yeah, I much prefer tough mentors. Mentors who will just tell you, yeah, this is wrong. You have to fix it, instead of sugarcoating it. Sugarcoating is nice, but it's not going to help you improve. So let me keep going here. We're almost done with this. I'm going to just quickly go through. Oh wait, and actually for an emotional scene, is there any recommendations on adding a teary eye gloss or also tears? You can just do that by changing the material of the eye, making it a little bit shinier. So you can just key the material to make it shinier. And then if you want to add tears, you can add like a semi-translucent, just take like a sphere and morph it to just create a little kind of lining on the bottom edge of the eye, maybe with like a little drop to the corner. And you just make it semi-translucent and like really shiny. So it's just cheating it. And that's all visible in the viewport without having to do any rendering, which is really nice. So let's jump back into the list here, and then we'll go through anything else afterwards. So let's say you finished class 5 and you're ready to move on. What are some things that you can focus on? Well, the big ones for class 5 is now we're starting to, at this point, you should have a good understanding of your body mechanics. You're starting to get into acting. Like I said before, you can still do all of these tests in class 5. It's not like, oh, well, you've done those, no more. All of these still apply. But in class 5, a few different things that can really help is learning more about composition. So once you finish class 5, do a little bit more deep diving into composition, different shot types, camera lengths, what is the terminology for different camera moves, composition in general. Do composition studies, so master studies, photography tests, create just simple scenes, no animation, just create a scene, put 2 characters in it, and try to tell a story just with the camera, and then make different variations of it that tell a different story. That can be huge. Do character interaction tests. This is something that I really love because it helps to break you away from the comfort zone of having each character in a bubble. This is something, if you look at a lot of reels especially, and look at a lot of people's work in their 2 character dialogue shots, one thing you'll tend to notice is that there's this invisible barrier between the characters. You have one character on one side, another character on the other side, and there's never an interaction. There's always this gap, no matter where they move. It's as if they're in their own bubbles and they can never quite close the gap. So, practice character interactions. Have a character punch another. Nudge, push, grab and pull, hold hands. Have one character like give the other character a piggyback ride. And it doesn't have to be a big thing. Like just do a step or even just 2 steps. A walk cycle with a character holding another, just to learn how to do it, just to figure out what do you need to do to have characters hold hands and animate your characters. Maybe they're just walking along and then swinging their hands together. How would you approach that? How would you approach having a character nudge another and create that realistic feeling in there? So create character interaction tests. And then once again, pose tests, always pose tests, but this one focusing on multi-character posing that tells a story, that it kind of once again goes into composition studies. Two characters in a scene, and in that one moment we can tell a story. And this is something where you could, let's see, what's his name? Now I'm gonna forget his name. I'm just gonna find an image here. I think it was, I'm finding a painter here. Norman Rockwell? No. Yeah, Norman Rockwell. Norman Rockwell, he's a famous painter. And what I really love about his paintings is that they tell a story. So for example, let's just kind of open this up. Here you have multiple characters sitting, and you can tell that there's a story going on. Everyone is listening to him. He's telling a story of some kind, and they're all being drawn in. You can just see by the way most of the characters are just leaning in, how much they are fascinated by this story that he's telling. But he feels a little nervous. Like it doesn't feel like he's like, yeah, let's tell this funny story. It almost feels like not scared per se, but there's this, like, he's holding himself back a little bit. We're getting a story here. Try to practice this. Look at paintings and see, or paintings, pictures, see if you can do the same thing of just creating a pose and tell a story with it. That, if you can do that, you've got great animation that can come out of that. So Norman Rockwell, he's one of my favorite painters. Just his expressions and everything are great. But try to practice that. Go through and see if you can have multiple characters in a scene and in one pose tell us a larger story. And of course, find dialogue clips for Class 6. Now lastly, with all of this done, Class 6, you've graduated, you've finished Class 6, or if you're learning on your own, you're at that phase where you just want to learn how to do polish and really refine your work. Well, these are going to be kind of broader elements because polish is this huge topic that there is no one little thing that you can do, because there's polish on blinks, there's polish on lip sync, there's polish on the nose that you can add little wiggles to, you can polish the ears, you can polish the fingers, you can polish every element of the body. So there's no like, oh, just do this one thing and you've got it. So these are going to be broader terms, but things you can do are short tests that focus on learning to polish a specific element. So if you want to refine your hand motions, well, maybe you have a character who has their hand on the table and they lift their hand up. And you just have to animate the hand, and you animate the drag of the fingers. Really try to get that connection between the fingers and the table or whatever they're interacting with. If you want to refine your facial polish, just do like what we mentioned earlier. Really pick one section, just the eyes, and really polish it. Add like when you blink, your eyes are moist, hopefully, or else they're going to be in pain. When they open up, there's a little bit of a peeling motion. If you look at slow motion of the eye, there's a little bit of a peeling in the corner of the eye, very slight. So you try to build that in just on the one frame of the blink. You push the the skin around it so that you blink and you feel that pressure going into the skin and then coming back up. The lips, same thing. When our lips open up, sometimes the corners get a little sticky. So you get that little bit of a zip motion in the corner of the mouth. You push like the little swallowing of the character if you can, or the arcs of the mouth corners. The way as you move your mouth, your nose is affected. You just pick these elements, this one little thing, and try to polish it. Maybe a character slams their hand on the table or punches a wall. How can you really make that punch really strong? So you just do that. Now, these other ones, these are going to be, then actually I'm going to move this up here just to keep this. Actually, I'll organize it after. So figure out your weak points and focus on tests that will strengthen them. This is a big, broad topic once again, but once you're in class 6, at this point, you're in demo reel territory. You are working on getting a job. You're graduated. Or if you're at this stage of your animation skills, it's really just improving your own self as an animator. So you have to be very self-aware of where your weaknesses are. Practice looking at your animation and going, okay, what do I struggle with the most? What is the one, or maybe the top 3 things that I don't do very well? And work on it and improve them. Make them your strengths. So maybe, I'm just not really good at lip sync. My lip sync never quite reads well. Okay, so do a whole bunch of tests just on lip sync until your lip sync is just gorgeous. Now that weakness is a strength, and you keep doing that. And as you go through, now your lip sync, great. But now, in comparison, your eye motion is just, it's not nearly as interesting. Okay, you do that. Maybe it's a larger concept. Maybe, my weak point is that when I go into splines, my shots fall apart. My blocking is great, and I go to splines and it goes all wrong. Okay, focus on that. Just do quick tests where you block out a scene very quickly and try to go into splines in a way that it works. And you get faster and faster at that. So find your weaknesses. On a similar note, find the weak points of your demo reel and work on quick animation tests that will address those weaknesses. So if you look at your demo reel and you see that, okay, I've got some great acting shots, but my body mechanic shots are meh. They're not great. They're just bland, and the characters never really, it's just not interesting. Okay, let's focus on making new body mechanic shots and improving my understanding of body mechanics. So when I make those new shots and replace my old ones on the reel, it's going to take my reel and just bring it up to that next level. So really push that element. And then lastly, once again, posing tests. There's always posing tests. Posing that creates a true emotional connection. This is the hardest thing that you're going to be able to do, but you want to create a pose where you just look at that pose and you can feel the raw emotion. Think of, if any of you have seen Up, there's certain moments where you just look at Carl's face and you can feel the sheer sadness that he's feeling, especially at the beginning. And you feel that sadness. There's other scenes where a character's so happy and you feel that joy just emanating off of them. Try to create poses that have that. It's not going to be perfect and it's not going to always be super clear, but essentially what you don't want is just smile. The character's smiling and they're happy, or they're laughing. No, you want that it feels like someone just took a picture the moment that this character just started belly laughing, and there's tears in their eyes and they're just so genuinely happy. Not smile, not laugh, genuine emotion. If you can do that, your reels are going to be golden, because that's what a lot of recruiters are looking for, is not so much the technical skills, but the true connection between us and the characters. So that's the list. I'm going to probably keep refining this because I want to add a little bit more explanation so you don't have to watch a video to go along with this. And as you can see, we're starting to add images and whatnot to make it a little bit more fancy. And there's going to be links in here. But I did want to go over this because I know a lot of people are starting their breaks right now. And I want to get this out there. So even if I'm not able to get this list out right away, maybe something will come up, I never know. You can at least watch the video and go through it and hopefully get something out of it.